David Goggins is a machine of a human being, and if you don't know who he is, let me tell you. He went from a 300-pound donut slugging loser to one of the most hardworking, fit, and disciplined persons on the planet. He's an ultra marathon runner, Navy SEAL, a firefighter who fights wildfires for 14 hours, and held the pull up world record for most in 24 hours. David Goggins is an inspiration to so many people because of his own struggles, and it is an inspiration because it challenges them to push themselves harder than they could ever imagine. By reading the title of this video, you're probably thinking one of two things. Either I'm badass for doing this, or I'm crazy for doing this. If you think I'm badass, you're going to enjoy the rest of this video, so stick around. If you think I'm crazy for doing this, let me just explain to you that this is the most Goggins way to read the book. David Goggins stands for so many things, but two things that he stands for is hard work and discipline. With my attention span being all over the place, it took a lot of hard work and discipline to focus for 14 hours straight and sit down and read the book. And to speak it out loud took physical pain upon myself because my throat was hurting and I had to get water and throat lozenges and all that, which I'll talk about later. But basically, I put myself through a hard work and endurance level struggle, not as hard as an ultra marathon or hell week, but something like that so that I can learn a little bit from it. And this book kept me motivated to read it for 14 hours straight, and I know it'll keep you motivated to live your life to the fullest and achieve any obstacle. So stick around to this video because we're going to get into the things that I learned from Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And I was going to talk about my motivations for doing this and the process of setting it up, but as David Goggins would say, let me cut the bullshit and get straight into this motherfucker. Here are the life lessons I learned from David Goggins' book and how you can implement them in your life. Before the start of this 363-page book, there's about a 4-page introduction which is jam-packed with a lot of valuable information. He had 4 main points, which was to number 1, callous your mind. Callousing your mind is something that he talks about all throughout this book, but it's about enduring struggle over and over again so that you get used to it. Much like when you have calluses in your hand from doing pull-ups over and over again and eventually your hands get stronger, callousing your mind is doing something you don't want to do over and over and over again until your mind gets used to it. The second point he talks about is to never have a victim mentality and to never embrace comfort. A lot of people want to take this path of least resistance, the path that's easiest. It's easy to be the victim because you take no blame for anything and you can blame things on others. And embracing comfort is so great because it's like, it's comfortable. It's what we want to do. But David Goggins also says that comfort is quicksand and that comfort is killing you. I really like this quote that comfort is quicksand because it makes sense to me. Going into comfort is like sinking into your bed. It's nice and relaxing and it's something we all want to do. But it's so hard to get out of your bed once you're, sleepy and tired and you're not going to be able to be productive. Much like opening up Instagram, it's fun and exciting and there's flashing colors, but to get out of it is really hard. It's exactly like quicksand where you get in and it's not that bad, but trying to get out, that's what's deadly. The final quote that he talks about, which is his mentality throughout kind of the military, is a quote by Heracletus. He says, out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't be there, 80 are just targets, 9 are real fighters, and we're lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But there's one warrior who brings all of them back. So like, David Goggins wants to be that one warrior and he wants to show you how to be special and unique. In chapter 1, we learn about David Goggins' childhood, which forced him to live into constant fear and pain, and that would set him back from the start of his life. He wasn't able to sleep, he didn't live a very healthy or comforting childhood, and that kind of hurt him. He has this quote that says, glossy surfaces reflect much more than they reveal. So pretty much he lived in a house where his dad would basically pretend that he wasn't like abusing his children. And so when he says glossy surfaces, it looked like he lived a great life, but actually it was like hell. He tells a story about his own struggles, and the chapter is called Should Have Been a Statistic, which stands out to a lot of people because a lot of people often have that excuse. For example, if you have asthma, then you should be a statistic for people that just don't run. Like, all right, I don't know, 60% of people that have asthma don't run, That's your excuse. Or if you have some disability, or for him it was like because of his race and his upbringing and the household that he lived in. And so he said he should have been a statistic. And basically that a lot of people doubted him because of his background and all that. And so that took a lot of mental challenge. And what he challenges the reader to do is to think about all the excuses that you have. Remember we talked about not having a victim mentality? So David Goggins says, look at all the struggles and all the hardships in your life, anything that you could blame an excuse on, list that out right now, and make sure you never use those as excuses. In chapter 2, David Goggins talks about being the only. He was the only black kid in his area and was often discriminated and pressured because of it. He talks about how this pressured him into doing things that weren't necessarily smart and ended up, hurting his self-esteem and hurting his image. And a lot of what he spent trying to do was impress other people or rebel against other people who discriminated against him instead of fixing himself. However, one day he talks about the accountability mirror and how it changed his life. He had a pep talk in the mirror where he literally said, "It's time to get real." Introducing this concept of the accountability mirror, it was basically where he was talking to himself, giving himself a pep talk like, you need to be better, you need to be doing this. And he had post-it notes up on a mirror. And what they would say were like, do your chores, fix your appearance, start studying harder. And what that did was every time he looked in the mirror, he'd see the post-it notes and have that check-in of goals every time he looked in the mirror. And so that helped him to kind of turn his life around. This idea of negativity in your life and the pressures being put down on you, David Goggins flips around and says that that's a great thing. He has the quote that negativity you feel towards yourself is an internal desire to change. And so you should use negativity as jet fuel to spring off. Often the people with the most, hardship and the people that were pressured the most have so much rocket fuel that they can explode if they use it properly. So 2 takeaways is basically to use that negativity and to have an accountability mirror where you put post-it notes and talk about your goals and look in the mirror every day and say, am I, the person I want to be? He says, don't sugarcoat anything. Don't say, well, I need to get leaner. Say, no, I'm a fat fuck and I need to lose some weight. In chapter 3, when you read the book, you may have thought that this was the time that Goggins became Goggins. He had the accountability mirror and he was getting better every day. He was working on his school, he was working on his physique, he was becoming a great person. However, in the military, David Goggins faced the challenge of excuses. Basically, the story goes that he wanted to be a pararescueman, and when he was doing this challenge, he didn't know how to swim, and so when they tested him on his swimming ability, he struggled and struggled and struggled, and eventually, when he was struggling and having hardships and wanted to get out of the military, the doctors came to him and said, hey, look, you might have sickle cell disease, which would the Navy doesn't like, or the military doesn't like, and they don't want you to have that disease and then go die on their watch, right? And so that gave him a way out, basically. And then the doctor came around and said, it's actually not as bad as we thought, so it's really up to you whether you want to stay in the military or not. And David Goggins, even though this was his dream, this is what he wanted, he said, nah, thanks, I'll leave the military, I don't want to get hurt with the sickle cell. But he knew deep down that was just an excuse, and that sent him into a depression that's talked about in later chapters, and he went from being lean and physical and studying hard to being a 300-pound pest control person. So he talks about you needing to walk the path of most resistance. That easy way out that he took by taking that medical leave, that easy way out was his excuse. And looking back at yourself, you're the one that's going to realize that, dude, I'm taking excuses, I'm taking shortcuts, and it's not going to help you. There's a great 2 quotes that I really like. One is that if you continue to surrender to fear and inadequacy, you will allow them to dictate your future. So basically, if you're always afraid, if you're always, fine with being, inadequate, if you're fine with not being successful, that will be what your life is. You'll be a coward that doesn't do anything. Another great quote is that I had to convince myself that all self-doubt and anxiety was confirmation that I was no longer living an aimless life. So this part he talks about when he applies to the SEAL program and he started working out and it was super hard, but he knew that all the self-doubt pent up in his head and all this anxiety, all this negative tension was actually a good thing because it meant that he was moving forward. A lot of people say that if you're moving in the wrong direction, the devil won't speak to you. It's when the devil's speaking to you that you know you're moving in the right direction. So it's kind of the same concept where if you're facing this internal negativity, you know you're probably doing something right because your body wants to be comfortable. It doesn't want to be great. Chapter 4 gets into the intense competitive side of David Goggins and goes over this concept of taking souls. If you've never heard of it before, it sounds extreme and it pretty much is. And what it is it's showing your doubters, that they're wrong and not letting them get the satisfaction that they want. So the SEAL commanders would be challenging David Goggins to, lift the boat higher, or keep running with it. They would run with boats. They would run with logs. That's why you hear who's going to carry the boats. It's like that's the training that they do, and they'd carry these logs and then go on mile-long runs. And the idea was that you wouldn't be able to run this. It's like not physically possible. And so the instructor's running and he's yelling at you guys. He's like, "Come on, keep up with me." But the instructor doesn't have a log, so it's like it's super easy for them. And so David Goggins decided to take the soul of the instructor, and so he was running as fast as the instructor, if not more, with the log kind of on him. And he motivated his whole crew to be that competitive. Taking souls isn't like murdering someone and harvesting their soul, but it's showing your opponent who doubted you something that they couldn't even do themselves, okay? Let's say you have someone who's like, "Bro, you can't bench, you suck," and then you stare them at the eyes and you bench 225 and you rep it out, and they could only bench like, I don't know, 200, you know? And so taking souls is a competitive metaphor for, not letting other people own you. It's like to own the other people, to like, completely destroy them in competition. And that's the motivation that David Goggins uses in this chapter. There's one particular story where David Goggins only has one leg because his other leg's like completely broken. He's swimming, he's out of breath, and the instructor's like, "I bet that you can't tie 3 knots 50 feet underwater in one breath," which is like, what? That's literally insane, bro. I can't even go 50 feet and hold my breath. Yet he has to stay there and tie the knots. And so the instructor, before David Goggins went down, he like took a deep breath and the instructor splashed water in his face. And so David Goggins couldn't even breathe, right? Went down, tied the first knot. The instructor like took his time, was like, okay, this knot's good. Go on to the next one. While David Goggins is rushing, he's out of breath, he's out of breath. He said that he was seeing stars. He said that, he wasn't gonna make it through it. But when he was tying the third knot, he saw that the instructor was laughing and he felt that he was going to pass out. And then he's like, "You know what? I'm going to take this guy's soul." And so all of a sudden he just locks in. He's like a superhero, dude. He just locks in. And then the instructor all of a sudden is out of breath because David Goggins just like mentally overcomes all physical barriers in order to prove his opponents wrong. And so he takes his time tying the knot underwater, which is crazy because the instructor's like, "Dude, wait, I can't breathe. You're the one who's been swimming for like 3 hours and only has one leg. How come you can't breathe? Or how come you can breathe and I can't?" And it's like, it's just a competitive control. Another lesson is like to claim ownership over yourself and never let anyone control how you feel and all that. Because if you have control of the situation, you're able to do more and, be better in competition. Chapter 5 gets into the minds of all those that are self-doubters. If you've ever been doing something hard like a run or a workout and you give up, oftentimes you're asking yourself subconsciously, "Why am I doing this?" If you're in the gym and you're trying to get that PR and you're pushing and you're pushing and you're almost there, but you can't do it and it hurts a lot, if it really, really hurts, your brain's going to be like, "Bro, why are you doing this?" And most of the time you're like, "Good point, I don't really know." And then you drop the weight, right? So David Goggins, who's an ultra marathon runner who goes on these 100-mile runs without training, and it's just physically and mentally, especially mentally exhausting, he says that you need to remember your why, because we have these split-second decisions and doubts that need answers. So every time that your brain is going, why are you doing this to yourself? This hurts so much. You have to have your purpose. He also talks about callousing the mind, which we talked about earlier, just going through life experience after life experience, going on 3-mile run, all right, and then go on a 4-mile run, and train your mind, and then when you go on a 100-mile run, it'd be a lot easier. He said that he stopped seeing himself as the victim and saw his life as the ultimate training ground. So instead of being mad at everyone for doubting him, he was like, "All right, now I'm gonna be like, what else can I do in life? I can just turn my life into the ultimate training ground." And that was pretty cool. And then a great quote, which I think relates to the semi-modern day, is that shame doesn't come at the knockout, it comes when you tap out. So think of the Conor McGregor Khabib fight. If you're watching this long, you probably have like the same interest as me, MMA and all that. But if you don't, basically there was this big hyped up fight with Conor McGregor, this international celebrity from Ireland, and Khabib the Eagle Nurmagomedov, who's like this crazy Russian fighter, probably one of the best to ever do it. And he challenged, and Conor McGregor, they fought together, right? And the whole thing was that Khabib had him in a chokehold and was like, go sleep for your country." That's what he said. because 50,000 people showed up for Conor McGregor. So many people showed up online. Millions of people had money on him and all that. And so there would be no shame if Conor McGregor got beat fair and square and just passed out, because that showed that he put all his effort in. But instead, Conor McGregor tapped. And tapping is safe and it's healthy, but David Goggins isn't about what's safe and healthy. He's about what's mentally right. Because he's saying that there's shame in tapping, because that means you didn't give 100% of all your effort. So that's kind of the mindset that David Goggins is in. It's like, you better get knocked out or you better keep going. Like a boxer, If you're not knocked out from a punch, then you better be ready to take another punch. And my favorite quote, probably from like this whole book, is that when you lose control of your mindset, you become a slave to self-doubt. If you've ever been doing something hard and you're like, well, I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if this is for me. Why am I doing this? These are all self-doubt questions that our brain is trying to do because it's uncomfortable, and our brain doesn't want to be uncomfortable. But comfort is not what grows us, and we'll talk about that later. But chapter 5 talks about this concept of these split-second decisions and being able to know why you're doing something and conquer your mind's self-doubt. David Goggins gives us a lot of tools to conquer self-doubt in this book, and one of the most powerful ones is the cookie jar. The cookie jar is a way to answer that why question, those split-second decisions. Every time you ask yourself why, every time you doubt yourself and say, I can't do this, every time you say, I can't do this, you want to dig in the cookie jar. The cookie jar is past achievements that help us dig further. So for example, if I'm doing 100 pull-ups, right, and it's my first time doing 100 pull-ups, I'm going to give up because I'm going to be like, damn, bro, I can't do 100 pull-ups. But once I do 100 pull-ups, then every other time I'm struggling to do 10, 15, 20 pull-ups, I'm going to say, dude, shut the fuck up. You did 100 pull-ups, so why can't you just do 10 right now, And so the cookie jar is digging into the past achievements to see how, how crazy you really are, to see how accomplished you really are. And so our past achievements help us dig in now, and our achievements now will help us dig in the future. And that's the same way with callousing your mind, how if you do hard work, eventually it'll get easier. And with the cookie jar, if I go for a mile run, I know that I can do a mile run, so I won't bitch out when I'm like, maybe I can't do a mile run, And so then I'll do a 2-mile run. And once I do a 2-mile run, it'll be impossible for me not to do a 1-mile run because I'll have no excuse whatsoever. So you got to have these answers. And if you don't have your cookie jar, if you don't have your accomplishments, first of all, you probably do. Okay. But if you don't, do something really small that you think is going to be super hard, right? Maybe you can't do a push-up. If you can do 10 push-ups on your knees, right? Then do 15 push-ups on your knees, and then do a push-up, and work towards that. And once you do that first push-up, you'll never doubt yourself again because you know you can do one. And it's all about knowing your own limits. And we can often push ourselves beyond what we expect. So for example, I really only think that I can like walk for like 20 minutes or something like that. But like realistically, I can walk for like 8 hours straight. So when you do extreme things like that, that push yourself, then you have these accomplishments in turn that you can use later whenever you're asking yourself your limits. Chapter 7 talks about our limits as well in the same way that the cookie jar does in chapter 6. He comes up with this idea of a governor, and if you don't know what a governor in a car is, it's basically something that limits how fast a car can go. So a lot of people will illegally disable it and make their car go faster. So in our minds, we don't have to illegally disable anything, but what we have to do is push forward and keep pushing ourselves and not listen to that limiting thing in our brain. David calls this the 40% rule. And he says that with our self-doubts limiting our potential, we really only output 40% of what we can truly do. So like when you're just starting a task, let's say you are studying for the first time, right? And you study for 1 hour and you're like, oh, I'm beat. I can't do this anymore. You're only 40% of the way there, bro. You got another 60%, but you don't know how to push your limits yet unless you callous your mind. David Goggins says that your mind is trying to find comfort, but comfort is not comfort is not there to help you grow. Let me say that again because I kind of messed that up. Your mind trying to find comfort is not there to help you grow. So when you realize that your mind is reaching for something that you shouldn't be reaching for, then you will be able to conquer your mind and say, hey, bro, I'm not trying to be comfortable. I'm trying to improve. And so you just need to do the uncomfortable things. David Goggins also talks about, those who care about us want us to be comfortable and safe. I know, especially if you're a teenager like me, your parents always want you to be comfortable. They want you to be safe. If you drive for the first time alone, they're all worried. They're like, please be safe. Whenever you do anything, it's please be safe. As long as you're happy, you'll hear that a lot. And these phrases, David Goggins basically says, fuck that. If you want to be great, you got to challenge yourself every day. You have to live in discomfort. Okay, comfort is quicksand. Comfort sucks you in and it doesn't let you out. Chapter 8's main premise is that you need to be addicted to hard work. David Goggins does a lot of things that take a lot of hard work, and he talks about how a lot of people say they don't have enough time to do stuff. But David Goggins was working 8-hour days. He ran, he did his workouts, he did all these things, he slept, and all in one day. So you need to be addicted to the hard work. And then you also need to live every minute like a 24-hour mission. So I've heard a great phrase in my life that you should live every day like it's its own life. And this is exactly what this quote's trying to say. What David Goggins is saying is that every day is something special, and that's, that could be your last day. You never know. So you need to take advantage of every minute given to you and work as hard as possible. Talking about, modern productivity, Goggins says that we live in a distracted world. And so each hour should be dedicated to a task, and you shouldn't stray for that. Trying to implement that, for example, from 1 o'clock to 1:50, my goal was to record this YouTube video, until 2 o'clock. My goal was to record the YouTube video. I wasn't going to work a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, because what Goggins said was that you should focus on one task at a time at a specific hour. Now it could be 12:30 to 3, or 12:30 to 12:45, but you need to have distinctive blocks. So he's like, fuck that multitasking, and what he tells us to do is to audit our schedules, and find the problems. So let's say you're a student, right? He wants you to wake up, think about what you do from when you wake up to go to school. Then think about how productive you are at school. Then what do you do when you get home? What do you do before you go to bed? And what do you do the next day? What do you do the next day? Audit this schedule, okay, and find the weaknesses in it. When you wake up, you get on your phone and you waste an hour on Instagram, okay? Then you eat sugary cereal and you go to school. You go to school and you goof around with your friends and you don't do any of your homework. So then you have to do homework at home for 2 hours. Then you're tired, so you go and play video games. It's like there's so much wasted time that you have so many open areas for productivity. And so you need to audit your schedule and see where the problems are and just do the hard work, bro. Don't embrace comfort. Do not embrace comfort. Chapter 9 was the chapter that really made me laugh because David Goggins said that you should be the uncommon of the uncommon. Living in the United States, I know that the Navy SEALs are the best of the best, and SEAL Team 6 is arguably one of the best trained regiments in the entire world, But each Navy SEAL has to go through Hell Week, which is literal, like, it's like hell. It's crazy training all the time, right? And so it's super hard to get through. Yeah, David Goggins is a Navy SEAL, and he's like, I need to go harder, right? When someone asks me to do something, I'll deliver above and beyond. He was in this training regimen, and basically they were like, it was on its way to be SEAL, to get to SEAL Team 6, which is like the best team in the Navy SEALs, right? And they were up this mountain, and it was so snowy that the trainers and instructors were like, yo, you guys can, like, go inside. Like, we can't. You guys are going to get hypothermia. But David Goggins was like, fuck that. We're going to secure the perimeter. And so he stuck with the training even when they didn't expect him to. And so he stood out above and beyond and always worked harder. And that's what it talks about, to be the uncommon of the uncommon. He says that when it comes to mindset, your attention matters and that you should stay sharp. He had many scenarios where one misslip of not paying attention cost him his entire goal. And so you need to always be focused on the goal at all times. Another lesson, which is kind of separate a little bit, is to be humble enough to be that dumb fuck in the classroom again. So a lot of people are not humble, and so they don't want to learn from, they don't want to look stupid and all that. But David Goggins says the only way for you to grow is to just be that dumb fuck in the classroom, right? If you want to be the uncommon of the uncommon, you need to do things that people don't commonly do. And so normally people will get smart and they won't ask any more questions because they don't want to seem stupid. It's uncommon to seem stupid even though you have all these achievements. But David Goggins is like, nah, seem stupid. Ask the stupid questions because then you'll go more. Then you'll be this person, you'll be this ultra marathon runner who also can do 4,020 push-ups in 70 hours. Chapter 10 of Can't Hurt Me offers more of the same advice. Don't focus on what you deserve, focus on what you're willing to earn, right? So you need to be able to do whatever you think you would put the work in for, okay? You don't deserve a Lamborghini if you're not going to put the work in to make the money to buy the Lamborghini, you know? He also talks about how we surround ourselves with people who speak to our desire for comfort. So, for example, you hang out with that really chill guy because he's always chill and he doesn't really do much, but he's a good friend because you guys play games together and you do that. And that's like a common thing that people do. People get drinking buddies, people get people that they watch shows with because it gives them an excuse to be comfortable. But we should be challenging ourselves every single day instead of being comfortable. He also brings this idea of the after action report, which I've been doing in my personal life before reading this book, and so that was pretty cool. And it's basically journaling. It's basically going at the end of the day and being like, okay, what did I do well? Talk about all my accomplishments, and then talk about my failures. Talk about all my failures, what went wrong, why we did this, and then like how to improve later. And when you do after action reports, you'll never make the same mistake twice. Another interesting tidbit was that when he was breaking the pull-up record, he had the mindset that the pull-up record person had taken his soul and his record that belonged to him, and so he was going to take it no matter what. And I think I talked about this earlier, but he used that level of competition. It was like extreme, right? And David Goggins was a super competitive person, and sometimes it's not about like telling like a person that you actually know. It's just about like for example, let's see you see someone on the side of the street who has a car that you really want, and you're like, damn, bro, that person's so rich. You want to take their soul, so you're gonna put in double the work that they do. You're gonna work as hard as they do, and then some. Chapter 11 was my favorite chapter because it was when I finally read the entire book. That was the end of the book, all 663 pages, and I truly enjoy this book, and I'll talk about my stories later. But there were some lessons in chapter 11. One is that you're the sum of all obstacles that you overcome. Goggins looks over his life and he's very grateful for all the pain and the struggle that he's gone through, and I think we can learn a lot from this. Goggins feels gratitude and feels close to enlightenment after suffering all this pain. Do you think that he would reach the same enlightenment if he didn't go through much struggle? Ask yourself, do you think if you lived your life comfortable, sitting on the couch with a 9 to 5 job, eating potato chips, like, not to say 9 to 5 isn't hard, but like an easy, comfortable job, if you live an easy, comfortable life, are you going to have enlightenment at the end of the day when everything's over? Or are you going to be like, damn, bro, I kind of wasted my life? But knowing that you put the hard work in, knowing that you put you went through pain intentionally, that helped Goggins to feel grateful at the end of his life. And the best thing that he leaves us with is to stop asking why. Stop that self-doubt, right? Whenever you're being like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Ask yourself, what if? Okay? Let me give you an example. If I'm saying, why am I recording this YouTube video? My throat hurts. I don't want to do this. The ring light's bothering me, right? Why am I doing this? I'm going to say, but what if this video goes viral? Okay? What if I look back and this is like the best YouTube video and I'm so proud of it and I'm so happy and I show all my friends, like, what if? And that what if is so much better, and that end goal is so much better, and then once you visualize it, it becomes possible. And all these lessons were pretty amazing, and there were some crazy stories to come along with it. Going through the book, there's probably 6 stories that were my very favorite. You know, I've told you a couple stories, but starting with the number 1 was when he first had the accountability mirror. He looked in the mirror, started screaming at himself. He was like, you need to get your stuff together. Military men don't do this. And he shaved his head and was screaming at himself. And like, that's insane. And it was a sign, it was a physical sign of changing. And it kind of like, that's the level of crazy that you have to get to sometimes to compel yourself to change. Another favorite story was that whenever he would skip a workout, this is when he was training to get into SEAL training, because you had to train to get there. He would go back and do it all over again. So whenever he missed one pull-up and was like, he drove home and was like, actually, I'm a bitch for that. and he drove back and restarted the entire pull-up workout. So he was so tired that he couldn't get one, but he came back and was like, "All right, I'm gonna do 100 now because I can't use that excuse." I already told you about the taking soul of the instructor, where he just kind of looked him in his eyes, even though he was out of breath, and was like, "I'm gonna take your soul, dude." Um, Before running a 100-mile, 24-hour race, he hit a crazy leg day with his old instructor. And so he basically did benched and he did bench what? He did squat and all these leg workouts, and then he ran the race and it like completely destroyed him, but he's just built like that, okay? He kept asking himself, "What if I succeed?" Instead of asking himself, "Why am I doing this?" he would say, "What if I succeed?" Because then not only will I've had run all this stuff, but I'd also have hit a workout right before, and I had no preparation, so that would be badass. And so that's kind of what kept him going too. Um, he was training for this race that was in Death Valley, and so he'd put on like 4 layers of clothes and bike and run to work, and it was like, bro, imagine like your teacher pulls up the class in like four jackets, and it's like 90 degrees outside, and the teacher's like, right, runs there and is like drenched in sweat, and it's like, "All right, class, let's get to work." Like, that's pretty inspiring, and it shows the level of dedication that he had. A lot of people think, I can't work out because of this, because of that, because of that. He was just, nah, I'll just run to work, I'll just bike to work. That's how I get my workout in. A lot of people could probably do that. My final The final story was that he was like, most Navy SEALs are too average. He was actually designing a workout routine for his troop, and his troop was like, "Bro, this is too hard." And he was so disappointed because he was like, "I thought you guys were supposed to be the toughest motherfuckers on planet Earth, and now you're being bitches." So he said that, and he went to Army Ranger School, and he set these records, and he did all these things. And the only reason that he failed and didn't get into Army Ranger School was because he like got too confident at the end, and he cut corners for the first time, and was like, he was super accountable about that. He wasn't mad about not getting into Army school because he was like, he recognized that he cut corners. Um, Basically, you weren't allowed to run on the road. You had to like run through the forest, and he ran on the road, because he knew that like if he ran in the forest, he'd run out of time. So a lot of cool stories. If you stuck to the end of this video, I appreciate you. Um, I'm gonna link in the description, in the bio, basically the video that I posted. It's 100x speed of me reading, so I can't upload the whole 14-hour recording. But I have an 100x speed video, which takes about 8 minutes to watch, and then it's like some more of me talking in the end. I also did 363 push-ups. That's one push-up per page. Just to, say that I could do it. And so that's why the camera moves and a bunch of stuff. But a big thanks to all my friends who stuck me on this live stream. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you could take what I was saying. I'm going to try and make this as successful as possible. I'll link my notes in the description so that you could read it if you don't like to, watch my whole video. But all I ask is that you subscribe if you want. This is just kind of a journal for me about my experiences, and life advice that I want to share with you. So thank you guys so much. Subscribe if you want, and get the book. Buy the book, dude. Can't Hurt Me. You should get this book, okay? Reading it yourself, I probably missed something that was meaningful to you, but this was everything that was meaningful to me. Get this book. Subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. David Gig David Giggin